the Laythams list for this week. Again, I'll reiterate that my list is based on week-to-week performances. So if a good team doesn't play as good as they should against a bad team, but a good team dominates a good team, I'll take that into account, and I'm gonna move, a good team that blew out a good team that blew out a good team. I'm gonna take that into account instead of a good team beating or barely beating a bad team. You know what I mean? Or a team that's not up to their standards. So I'm definitely, when I do that on a week-to-week basis, I take that all into account. So this isn't what I'm saying necessarily that I think these are the 10 best teams in the league at the moment. I just think, based upon last week's performance, this is how I would rank the teams from last week's performance, right? So I'm going to have two new teams enter the list this week, and then I guess let's roll into it. So at the 10 spot this week, re-entering the list, I have the Kansas City Chiefs, and I almost didn't put Kansas City back into this list because, like I said, they didn't look great, right? The final score really doesn't dictate what that Kansas City game was. I think Kansas City was down 3 at half, and Washington, for a half a game, looked like they were the Washington defense that they were a year ago. I'm telling you, Taylor Heineke, he's a baller. He's a guy that is open to eyes. If you ask me, I think Taylor Heineke is a lot better of a player than he gets credit for. He's got weapons around him. Antonio Gibson is a pretty good running back. Terry McLaurin, of course. Logan Thomas, the tight end. He's got an all right line. I don't know what the PFF on their line is, but he's got to have a pretty decent line. So Kansas City. Here's the thing with Kansas City. I'm hesitant on Kansas City just because Kansas City's defense is legit the worst defense in the NFL, and it's not even close. Kansas City per play is averaging, Kansas City's defense is allowing 7.3 yards a play on defense. That is almost a first down a play. Kansas City's defense is struggling really bad, really, really bad. They are almost last in every statistical category, and that can't win a championship. That's not going to beat these other top teams in the league, and it hasn't. Right? Every time they've played, they lost to the Ravens, they lost to the Bills, they lost to the Chargers. Those are playoff teams. They've lost to all. They're 3-3. All 3 of their losses are to playoff teams, and then they beat the Eagles, borderline playoff team. Washington, not a playoff team, and who else did they beat right at the beginning of the year? I can't remember who else that other loss is, but those 3 wins are. But those 3 wins are against non-playoff teams, and their 3 losses are against playoff teams, and that's because of the defense. Kansas City's going to win a shootout versus the Eagles. Kansas City's going to win a track meet versus Washington, right? Because the Eagles and Washington's defense cannot keep up with Kansas City's offense, right? So I can't keep defending the Chiefs if they keep playing really bad defense. Okay? Oh, and they lost to the Browns. They beat the Browns at the beginning of the year. So that's 1 win against a playoff team that they've had this year. So you can't win. The other 9 teams, aside from maybe 1 team in this list for me, all have solid to good defenses, right? Or some have great. You have to have a defense to win, okay? You could argue that Kansas City, right? Kansas City has been in the last 2 Super Bowls, and their defense was their liability in the last 2 Super Bowls, okay? People are going to say that the offensive line was a problem last year, but at the end of the day, the Kansas City defense could not stop Tampa Bay's offense. So that's going to be the problem for them. And I don't think this year, especially, Kansas City is not going to be able to just run through the playoffs with just offense, okay? The crazy part is that this defense is bad, and there's really no way it can get better, right? They've just got to get on the same page internally within the organization. They have to get on the same page because Kansas City cannot just win with offense. If they're going to try to get in shootouts with Buffalo, which they already did and they lost, they're going to try to get in shootouts with Baltimore, which they already did and they lost. If they're going to try to get into shootouts with, these top teams, they're not going to win because they got to have the defense. And so, Kansas City at the 10th spot this week. Entering the list for the first time this year is going to be the Tennessee Titans. They were able to upset the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football after Josh Allen slipped on kind of a bad fourth and short call with like 30 seconds left in the game. Tough call for the Buffalo Bills. We'll get to that. Tennessee they're such a weird team. They're that team in high school that just runs the ball and just wins sometimes. They don't have a bad quarterback, but they don't have a great quarterback. They just run the ball, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. Derrick Henry, this is really sad, okay? Derrick Henry last year was the first running back in NFL history to run for 2,000 yards in a single season and not win league MVP. Like, wasn't even considered, really, when you really think about it. Derrick Henry Henry, with the extra game, could realistically run for like 2,400 yards. This real set the NFL record and still not even come close to the MVP award. And it's really, really sad because the word and term most valuable player, it just doesn't exist anymore. It should just be called best player is what it should be called, because the term most valuable to their team's success, a most valuable player to their team's success, is not what's taken into account anymore. It's the best. The last couple of MVPs have just been the best player on the best team, okay, statistically. Derrick Henry is the engine to this Titans team, right? If Derrick Henry doesn't play well, the Titans don't play well. Same thing with like a Lamar Jackson. If the Ravens didn't have a Lamar Jackson, or Lamar Jackson wasn't playing as good as he is, the Ravens would not be good. Okay? The value that Lamar has to the Baltimore Ravens is the reason why they succeed. The value that Henry has to Tennessee is why they succeed. Another example could probably be like a Matthew Stafford. You could even say like a Matthew Stafford's his success with the Rams has made them a much better team, right? Because even with the Jared Goff last year and the years in the past, they've been all right, So it's sad to see that, Tennessee's going to they might sneak into this playoffs, but Derrick Henry is not going to get the credit that he truly, really deserves. So Tennessee's going to sneak into the list this week. They played very well against Tennessee. Ryan Tannehill isn't a great quarterback, but he does what he needs to do, right? He gets the ball to Derrick Henry, but he doesn't make mistakes through the air, right? It's one thing if you run the ball really well, and it's a whole other thing if you run the ball well, and you're passing it efficiently. Ryan Tannehill is an efficient passer, so entering at number 9 this week will be the Tennessee Titans. Staying even this week will be the Packers. They've just kind of slowly dropped down the list. They haven't been impressive to me. They haven't had a game in the last couple of weeks where I went, oh, yep, Green Bay, that's the team I picked to win the NFC this year. They've just been getting by, really. They're winning their games, and they're winning them by, double digits, but it hasn't been the dominant Packers that we saw maybe even a year ago. As long as they're winning and they're winning the games they should be winning, that's what matters. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter really how they're winning the games, but I don't know. I just haven't seen a whole lot of what I want to see from a top team like the Green Bay Packers. They just haven't shown me what I want to see yet. So they're going to stay even this week at the number 8 spot. And slightly above them is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals for me. They're going to go up 2 spots after dominating Detroit. So here's the thing with Cincinnati. Cincinnati is a good team, right? They're a lot better than I thought they were going to be. And they're kind of being carried by their offense because their defense isn't great, okay? It's better than Kansas City's, but it's not a great defense. And still not a great offensive line, but they're doing it. They're doing well even without those key parts to their offense. So Cincinnati, to me, is an underdog team that is getting slept on. The signs of a good team is they keep it competitive with other great teams, and they blow out teams they should be beating that they're better than. But the Cincinnati was the first team this year that was finally able to blow out Detroit. Detroit had been in every single game this year, but Cincinnati finally was the team that said, you know what, we're better, we're going to blow out the Lions. And they did. So I have to take that into account when I'm saying, okay, Cincinnati is a good team that's kept it close with other, playoff contending teams and then blew out teams that they should be blowing out, right? So I like the only knock I'm having on Cincinnati is the offensive line and just not being all the way there defensively, especially in the secondary. So Cincinnati is going to go up 2 spots to the 7th seed this week. Down 2 spots for me from a week ago is going to be Tampa. Not because I think they're the 6th best team in the league. They shouldn't be keeping it close with Philadelphia. It shouldn't. I know the game is a lot closer than it really showed, or the score was a lot closer than it really was. They were up late in this one, and Philadelphia kind of put in a lot of late scores. This doesn't make sense, but I'll try to explain it. Tampa isn't the 6th best team in the league. I think other teams above them are just hotter right now. They're just on a better roll right now. I think Tampa Bay is doing exactly what they need to be doing. They're winning, and they're finding everything they need to find. Their offense is a lot better last year than it was this year. The only problem is their defense is kind of falling behind, and the other teams above Tampa are teams I think that their defenses are just better than Tampa. So when I get to this top 5 of my list and stuff, I just start to get nitpicky. I say, what teams have what they need offensively and what they need defensively. And so whoever lacks somewhere offensively or defensively, I'm going to just give a knock to them, So Tampa the defense has not been what it was last year, right? Last year, it's crazy because last year at the beginning of the year, the defense is kind of what was carrying Tampa through the early struggles of the season, right? Because the offense was kind of struggling, it wasn't clicking. This year, it's kind of the other way around, right? They're kind of banged up defensively, losing some guys. I know Antonio Winfield and stuff like that's out. They're banged up defensively, don't look great defensively. They're the worst pass coverage or passing defense in the league. I think that they're literally they're 32nd against the pass. So in a passing league, especially in the NFC, where you got Kyler Murray, you got Matthew Stafford, you got Aaron Rodgers, you cannot be the worst pass defense in the NFC. There's way too many guys that are amazing, otherworldly passing the ball in the NFC. So that's something that Tampa needs to get fixed because they cannot sit there with a 32nd ranked defense and expect to try to win another championship, especially in the NFC. So just the defense for me in Tampa, I think their offense is really clicking actually all around. Leonard Fournette is having a gigantic resurgence. He's pass catching the ball like he never has in his career. He's running the ball like he's back in Jacksonville. I actually like what Tampa's doing offensively. Rumors has it that O.J. Howard might get traded by the deadline. He had a whole lot more touches last week than he's ever had to this point in the season. So they were trying to show that he was a top draft pick as a tight end a couple of years ago. And so I think they were trying to showcase he still has it. He's just behind Gronk and Cameron Brate. So I think they're going to look to move him at the break, at the trade deadline. So Tampa at the 6. Getting into our top 5. Down 2 spots for me is going to be Dallas. I don't know whether to say Dallas played bad. Okay, they played bad. Okay, they had 12 penalties, 2 red zone turnovers. They should have lost that game to New England. But I'm not knocking the Cowboys at all. I'm kind of speaking higher on New England. New England has played 2 contending teams at home, and they made them ball games. Mark my words, next year, New England is going to make the jump. They've lost some close games to some good teams, and they're kind of hard to beat at home, for sure. And so, but I have to take into account the fact that Dallas had 12 penalties, allowed a 1-play score right before overtime, and then had 2 red zone turnovers. That was the first time. I just last week talked about how the Dallas hadn't had a bad game yet, and every team in the league had at least had one bad game, and Dallas had yet to have a bad game, and that was it. They finally had their bad game. All of the hullabaloos about Trevon Diggs, we'll get into that a little bit later. I have a segment on Trevon Diggs later, but gotta pick up the kind of penalties like that. Can't have red zone turnovers. If they played anybody else above them and had those kind of mistakes, they wouldn't win. I mean, they could have played against Tampa or Green Bay and they wouldn't have won if they made those kind of mistakes. So coming in at the 5, down 2 spots, is the Cowboys. At the 4 this week, down 3 spots after losing on Monday Night Football, is going to be Buffalo. Again, same kind of case as Tampa Bay. I don't think Buffalo's the 3rd best team in the league. I just think I don't think Buffalo's the 4th best team in the league. I just think the 3 teams above them are looking better right now. Buffalo, it's hard to say that they lack rush defense when they run against Derrick Henry. It wasn't an awful game by Buffalo, if you know what I'm saying, but Buffalo coming in was a lot of people's top team. And so you have to go, I know it's a tough atmosphere, right? They have to go and beat Tennessee on the road. But this was low-key kind of, a wake-up call for Buffalo, right? The last couple of weeks they had kind of had it easy, right? They had kind of had they had the Dolphins easy, Washington easy, Texans easy. They'd kind of had it easy the last couple of weeks. And then they played the Chiefs last week. You could arguably say that's an easy game for them. So Tennessee was the first playoff-type team that they played in quite a while. And so they finally played some stiffer competition and they lost. Maybe they're not quite as invincible as we thought they were. And it doesn't get any harder for the Bills for the next 3 weeks is Dolphins, Jags, Jets. Buffalo's gonna win 40-0 the next 3 games. So, they have Tampa later in the year, but that's as hard as it gets for the rest of the year for the Bills. When you're in that AFC East, you basically get 4 automatic wins every year because you got to play the Jets and you got to play the Dolphins. So Buffalo, they don't have the toughest schedule to me, so that's a little bit of a knock for them. Up 2 spots to the 3 seed this week will be Baltimore. I've tried to avoid Baltimore bias as much as possible, but I can only avoid it for so long without actually giving them credit. They blew out the Chargers, and they blew them out bad. 35-6 is a blowout against a team that a lot of people like. My worry going into this game was the defense for Baltimore. Baltimore's defense, aside from the Kansas City game, had really not shown me anything to say, okay, they're great on offense, or they're amazing on offense, and they're great on defense. They had not shown me anything, and even statistically, the Ravens don't have one of the worst defenses I've had quite a while. But that offense in Los Angeles a week ago, Justin Herbert had 400 yards and 5 touchdowns, and he got shut down this week. They scored 1 touchdown. That was it. And I don't even think they had over 200 yards of total offense. They absolutely brought it to the Chargers, and I'm taking that into account. Lamar didn't have the greatest game, but he didn't have to because they were just running the ball down the Chargers' throat. They had 187 yards rushing, 3 rushing touchdowns. When you're running the ball and you're up late so much, you don't need to pass the ball, and they took out Lamar late. They got in there, got the dub, and got out, and it was easy for them. Quite easy. So at the 2 spot this week, staying even will be the Arizona Cardinals. They have all the pieces, Arizona, to be... the sad part about Arizona is they're either going to be the 1 seed or they're going to be the 5 seed, which is crazy, because that's how the NFL playoffs works. It works with the top 4 are division leaders, and then it's just the next 3 best records, or 2 best records. And so Arizona's either going to be the 1 seed or they're going to be the 5 seed. And everyone's speaking a lot higher of them just because they're undefeated at the moment. I don't like to see just the records and say, this team is the best team in the league just because they're undefeated. I don't think the Cardinals are the best team in the league. just my knock on the Cardinals right now is experience, because when you start to look down the line of the top guys on this team, right? Kyler Murray, no playoff experience. James Conner, little to no playoff experience. Cliff Kingsbury, little to no playoff experience. On the defensive side of the ball, they have a little bit more experience. J.J. Watt has playoff experience. Chandler Jones has championship experience. I just think they're too young to be in high regards for me. They also last year got off to a really good start and fell apart at the end of the year because Kyler Murray just didn't hold up. And he is already kind of getting injured. He's a little banged up right now. I don't trust them all the way to say, you know what, Arizona, you're the best team in the league. This week they've got Green Bay. They got Houston. Houston and then Green Bay in 2 weeks. So schedule's going to get just a little bit tougher towards the end of the stretch. They even have the Cowboys upcoming. So it's going to get a little bit tougher down the stretch. This week they're going to go 7-0. They have Houston this week. Unless they get upset, they have Houston. So that's tough to see. They're going to be 7-0. I like everything that Arizona brings. It's just lack of experience, okay? You have to have experience when it comes to the playoffs. It's going to be the same thing with the Cowboys. The Cowboys don't have little to none playoff experience, and that's going to shoot them in the foot in the playoffs. So at the 2 spot, I got Arizona, and up 5 spots this week, which is kind of a big jump when it comes to my list, is going to be the Rams. I think if when the Rams and the Cardinals play again, the Rams are going to win this game. They had the Seahawks they had the Giants this last week, and the defense finally clicked. They absolutely dominated the Giants the way that they should have dominated the Giants. They should be dominating teams like that, especially defensively. Their offense is already spectacular. We already know that. But defensively, they hadn't shown me what I had wanted to see from the defense to this point. But they ate up the Giants. Absolutely ate up the Giants. And so I took that into account. They looked the best defensively this week. They look like the best team defensively this week, and they look like the best team offensively this week. And that's why I have the Rams going all the way up to the number 1 spot, because I think last week they were the team to beat last week. So running down through that again, re-entering the list will be the Chiefs at the number 10 spot, the Titans at the 9 spot, the Packers at the 8, 7 will be the Bengals, 6 is the Buccaneers, 5 is the Cowboys, 4 is the Bills, 3 is Baltimore Ravens, 2 is the Arizona Cardinals, and 1 will be the Los Angeles Rams.